the huge rally that Donald Trump had at Madison Square Garden, which was such a huge success that they've tried to turn it into some sort of Nazi rally.
Trump's momentum in early voting isn't just about numbers. It's a cultural shift playing out in real time. We're seeing public figures openly showing MAGA support in ways that break from the usual political caution. At a Texas Tech game, the kicker went viral when he flashed a MAGA shirt after scoring, while NFL star Nick Bosa doubled down on his support, proudly wearing a MAGA hat in a post-game interview. These moments aren't just about politics. They're signaling a broader acceptance of Trump's influence in spaces that were previously neutral or even critical of him. It's clear that this election season, MAGA has taken on a life of its own, reaching into everyday culture and reshaping the conversation.
And you know who's voting there? To a large extent, lots of minorities. And that is because many minorities have recognized that they've been told lies about Donald Trump.
Trump's momentum in early voting isn't just about polling numbers. It's a cultural wave sweeping through arenas once seen as strictly neutral, even hostile to MAGA. At a recent Texas Tech football game, a kicker went viral after lifting his jersey to reveal a MAGA message.
And Democrat voters are actually voting right now in the early voting, and those numbers are very, very favorable towards Donald Trump,
setting off a social media firestorm. Soon after, NFL star Nick Bosa followed suit, proudly displaying a MAGA hat during a post-game interview. These bold displays of Trump support show a noticeable shift in how public figures are engaging with politics, particularly in sports, where athletes are often encouraged to stay away from polarizing issues.
Choose the name for that by random. Merit Street Media. This country was built on hard work, added value, and talent, not on equal outcome.
Yet MAGA symbols are not only showing up in mainstream spaces, they're being celebrated and shared widely by audiences. These moments highlight a broader change in Trump's appeal that is stretching into traditionally apolitical spaces, influencing fans and followers across the country. In past elections, we rarely saw sports figures publicly aligning with Trump without facing considerable backlash. Now, these figures are embracing MAGA openly, and the public reaction is largely positive, even enthusiastic.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark, gothic MAGA.
Marking a shift in how people engage with politics in everyday settings. The level of acceptance and normalization surrounding MAGA symbols, from football fields to post-game interviews, is fueling a new brand of grassroots support that seems far removed from the political rallies and speeches typically associated with campaign cycles. What's especially significant here is how this grassroots movement seems to overlap with Trump's rising early voting support. It's not just high-profile endorsements, but a kind of cultural endorsement, as everyday voters are increasingly encouraged to view MAGA not just as a political stance, but as a lifestyle and identity.
Eminem, Leo DiCaprio, Beyonce, every day the Democratic Party looks more and more like a P. Diddy party.
This widespread embrace of Trump's message in pop culture points to a powerful shift, one where people feel emboldened to wear their politics on their sleeve, or in this case, on a sports jersey.
Do me a favor, do you know Elon Musk? Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement, too. The tough. He said, the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala.
And with MAGA symbols appearing in new arenas, it's clear that the political battlegrounds in 2024 extend well beyond the polls. They're happening in our stadiums, on our screens, and in the heart of popular culture.
Melania, and the crowds went absolutely wild.
Commander-in-Chief, my husband, President Donald J. Trump.
Polling data and early voting trends tell a compelling story. Trump isn't just gaining cultural momentum, he's making significant gains in key swing states that Democrats relied on in the past.
Online commentators were shocked by the huge turnout, with this commentator saying,
Pennsylvania, Arizona, and North Carolina are seeing a Republican surge in absentee ballot requests, with Democrats facing a noticeable drop. Pennsylvania, for instance, has shown Republicans holding steady, while Democrats' absentee ballot requests are down by hundreds of thousands compared to 2020.
And Democrat voters are actually voting right now in the early voting.
The result? A potential early advantage for Trump that could make a big difference on election night, especially in battleground areas where every vote counts. In Arizona, the trend is even more dramatic. Republicans are reportedly holding a 99,000 vote lead in early ballot.
In Arizona, Trump is up 74% to 26%.
A margin that indicates Trump's campaign is succeeding in motivating early voter turnout. This data suggests a major enthusiasm gap, with Republicans eager to vote and take advantage of early voting opportunities. North Carolina shows similar trends, where Republicans have gained a 30,000 vote edge over Democrats. If these numbers hold, they could signal a strong start for Trump in these critical states, tipping the scale in his favor before Election Day even arrives.
It's unbelievable. I could have gone, I'm telling you, I felt I could have gone all day, but I said, Doc, I can do this all day long.
What's surprising is the scale of these shifts in early voting behavior. In the 2020 election, Democrats used absentee ballots and early voting as a key strategy, partly due to COVID-19 precautions. Now, with those concerns largely diminished, Democrats are struggling to repeat their 2020 success in early voting, while Republicans have maintained or improved their numbers. The turnout data shows a reversal of early voting trends, suggesting Trump and his team may have effectively mobilized Republicans to vote early, which could signal a crucial strategic win if it carries through to Election Day.
So I guess we're all on the same page. So I got one final question for you. What you gonna do, and who's gonna make America great again?
As Trump's early voting success builds, Democrats are responding by doubling down on rhetoric that paints his campaign in a negative light, attempting to label his rallies and growing support as authoritarian. High-profile figures within the Democratic Party have used terms like fascism to describe Trump's movement, but this strategy appears to be backfiring in surprising ways. Many voters, especially those in swing states, seem unpersuaded by these labels. Instead, they're becoming increasingly wary of the Democratic Party's message, viewing the accusations as a deflection from real issues like inflation, crime, and the economy, which continue to weigh on voters across the country. This contrast in messaging is pushing some undecided voters and even former Democrats to reconsider their options.
Financing, unions, all the municipal stuff, environmental. Of all of it, to me, the toughest thing was the environmental.
Trump's rally in Madison Square Garden is one example of the disconnect between Democratic messaging and public reception. Despite attempts to label it as extremist, the event drew a diverse crowd, with people of various backgrounds vocally supporting Trump's message. For these supporters, it's less about ideology and more about shared discontent with the current state of the nation. For example, many attendees voiced concerns about rising living costs, job security, and public safety, issues they feel are not being addressed effectively by the current administration. This response reflects a deeper frustration among voters who feel sidelined by the Democrats' approach and more aligned with Trump's focus on economic revival and national security.
Choose the name for that by random. Merit Street Media. This country was built on hard work, added value, and talent, not on equal outcome.
Stands out is that these voters are not strictly loyal Republicans. They represent a spectrum of demographics that Trump didn't necessarily reach in 2016 or 2020. Many are working-class Americans who feel they've been left behind, as well as minorities who see Trump's policies as offering tangible benefits over rhetoric. This shift is significant because it marks a departure from traditional voter alignment, showing that Trump's support is widening beyond his core base. The rise in minority support, especially in places like Miami-Dade County, which has shifted from reliably blue to Republican leaning, points to an underlying current of discontent that Democrats may have underestimated.
I'm not just MAGA. I'm dark, gothic MAGA.
Meanwhile, Trump's message of economic empowerment, deregulation, and America First policies resonates deeply with these voters, further fueling this alignment shift. This growing coalition of support, particularly among new demographic groups, isn't merely a reaction to Trump himself, but a response to what they see as a Democratic Party that is out of touch with everyday struggles. As this coalition grows and consolidates around Trump's message, it's becoming clear that these voters are looking for change that addresses their immediate concerns rather than than political narratives. Trump's approach, combining cultural momentum with a straightforward economic message, seems to be resonating far beyond his initial voter base, positioning him to make deeper inroads among Americans who might not have considered him a viable candidate in previous elections.
The huge rally that Donald Trump had at Madison Square Garden, which was such a huge success that they've tried to turn it into some sort of Nazi rally.
As the 2024 election approaches, it's becoming increasingly clear that Trump's early voting dominance is not a mere flash in the pan. It reflects a deeper cultural and political realignment in the United States. The combination of public displays of support, like those seen in sports and entertainment, and the shifting voter dynamics in swing states indicates that Trump is tapping into a broader wave of discontent. While Democrats attempt to frame Trump's resurgence as a return to extremism, they may be missing the mark entirely. Voters are not just rallying behind a candidate, they're expressing a desire for authentic change, grounded in their lived experiences and everyday realities. This election cycle presents an opportunity for voters to voice their frustrations and aspirations, reshaping the political landscape. For many, Trump embodies a promise of renewed focus on economic growth, public safety, and national pride. As he rallies supporters across the country, he is not only leveraging his past presidency, but also presenting himself as a champion for those who feel unheard and overlooked by the current administration. This connection is particularly potent among minority communities and working-class voters who have historically felt alienated from the political process. The stakes are high, and as the early voting data continues to unfold, it becomes evident that Trump's approach is resonating in ways that may have lasting implications for both parties. For Democrats, the challenge lies in adapting their message to address the concerns of everyday Americans rather than relying solely on attacks against Trump. Ignoring the underlying issues that have led to Trump's surge could further alienate voters who are eager for substantive solutions rather than political posturing. As Election Day approaches, the narrative will undoubtedly evolve, but one thing remains certain: the dynamics of this election are shifting in favor of Trump, propelled by grassroots energy and a cultural renaissance of MAGA enthusiasm. The coming months will be critical for both parties as they seek to capture the hearts and minds of voters, and it will be fascinating to watch how these trends play out. The 2024 election could very well redefine not just who sits in the Oval Office, but the fundamental direction of American politics for years to come.